What's up everybody, I'm PJ Tremblay, and this is how I composed the music for Oddbird Studio's award-winning game, Arrowheads. So I guess it all started with us attending the same college program, which was the Bachelor of Game Design at Sheridan College. I had worked with one of their team members on a game jam. We all knew that they were doing this game on the side while they were taking their courses. They made this specifically for a Level Up Toronto competition, which they won first place in. I was already impressed with the game, so when they asked me if I wanted to do the music, it was pretty much a no-brainer. When I'm making music for a game, I don't just make whatever I think sounds good. I really want to make what fits the game. And in order for me to know that, I have to know the game and experience the game. So when they gave me all the info that I needed to get started on a theme song, something that would just sort of define what the music was going to be for this game, I sat down, I had their concept work up, and I had some gameplay footage just running on loop. And I was just trying to slip into the world of Arrowheads. I had asked for a piece of concept art that really showed the personalities of the 4 different birds that you can play with. The personality that stuck out the most to me was the Bluebird. It seemed like he had the strongest personality, so somehow I got into imagining that this bird would take a bird bath in the middle of the forest, sing this pompous tune as if nobody else is around and he doesn't care what anybody thinks about him, just la la la, that sort of thing. I don't know why I sang it that way, but once I put together some of the sounds that I felt were essential for what the game needed, it was zany, it was cartoony, it was energetic. So I used pizzicato, violas, I used some string instruments, I used certain elements that I felt were going to fit and really reference the setting and the artwork and the characters and the general feel of it. I started singing that la to the theme that I was working on. Honestly, I thought it was ridiculous. I thought that I didn't know actually how they would react to it. I had no idea what they'd think. I was very nervous about it. I thought that they would just be like, okay, well, you thought outside the box, but that was maybe a little too much. It's just weird. So I met up with them to show them some concepts that I had worked up, played it for them, and I just sat back and waited for the reactions. And as soon as the Bluebird character started singing, la, they all started laughing, and I was like, oh, I hope this is a good laugh. Sure enough, it was, thankfully. They were very happy with that, with the general idea of what I was trying to do. They felt that it really fit. So I was like, okay, now I have a very basic sort of foundation and a very basic direction of what should work for this game. I decided to stick to that theme regardless of the stage music that I was working on. So if there's anything that rubs me the wrong way, it's when a game or a film has music that sounds like it could be placed on anything, basically. That sort of generic composition, even though it's well made, for me just is forgettable. So that's not what I do when it comes to composing for a game. What I do is I want to make sure that that music couldn't work with anything other than the game that I made it for. I want it to reference specific settings, specific characters, specific artwork, specific design experiences, so that when you hear that music on its own, you'll know exactly what that's from. Hans Zimmer is a master of this. He's one of my favorite composers. When you hear one of his scores, you know, oh, that's from Inception, or that's from Pirates of the Caribbean, or that's from Sherlock Holmes. You just know, because he writes for specific experiences and even specific emotions, specific worlds. Every note and pattern has a purpose and is telling a story. It's telling the specific story that the music is written for. This is what I aspire to do better and better. So with Arrowheads, because the stages were so different from each other, I really had to stick to that sort of central theme of cartoony, zany silliness, but also, you know, very colorful sounding music. But each stage had to be its own thing. And thankfully, because the stages were so specific in their setting, in the way that they were designed, in the way that they were illustrated, this was much easier for me. So, you know, you have a pirate ship stage, for example, where it's obviously on a pirate ship. It's a very specific type of context. So if I make a pirate ship track, it's not just going to be a generic symphony or generic 8-bit sounding whatever. I'm going to put water, the sound of crashing waves in music. I'm going to embed the sound of creaking wood. I'm going to embed sea chanties. And I'm not going to use a rock drum kit on a track like this. I'm going to make nature-based percussion and embed that. So all the percussion that you hear in Pirate Ship and in Avian Ruins are actually entirely made out of logs, sticks, and leaves that I recorded in the forest. I'm going to use the types of instruments from that time period that you kind of expect to hear. Doing that really helps to reference the material that you're making the music for. If I didn't have those specific stages being the way that they were, I would have just been composing sort of all over the place. Stuff that may have, you know, sounded good on their own, but they probably wouldn't have made the stages feel like, oh yeah, this music was made for this stage and it makes me feel like I'm here the same way the artwork does and the same way that the gameplay feel does. So that was very important and a lot of fun too. It was great to switch from, you know, a pirate ship to a snowy mountain summit to a beach to an arrow forge, underground, Avian Ruins. Everything had their own specific description of what it needed from me in order for the music to make sense and to feel like it fits. One thing that I had to be very mindful of was redundancy. Since the game is played in matches or you fight hordes, you repeat stage experiences all in one go until you accomplish what you needed to accomplish. Music is obviously going to be looping. I can only make the music so long, otherwise it would take me forever to do it for all these stages. How do I make this not annoying? I took something from what I learned from a different game, Scrabble for iOS. Something I play war games every single day. I just can't help myself. And the Scrabble game has this background tune that if you choose to play it, to have it playing in the background, it's just this really short, simple, pleasant little, you know, tune. And it didn't occur to me for the longest time that I wasn't annoyed of it. And once that registered, I was fascinated. I was like, how on earth did they make this not annoying? I realized it was because the music was split into two different types of vibes. You know, it plays the one sort of vibe, and then this tune is maybe like 30 to 60 seconds max. It switches to the next vibe, and then just does those two different vibes over and over and over again. And what a difference that actually makes. You might not think that it makes a huge difference, but it really does. If you're hearing one type of vibe, it's very easy and it doesn't take a lot of time for your brain to start getting very familiar with the patterns, and the music becomes very predictable. A composer has something to their advantage, and that's gameplay. The gameplay can help distract the player a little bit. So if you do something like two different vibes, the player may only be registering part of the music as the whole experience. So it won't register what's getting repeated for a much longer time if you simply double the type of vibe that it offers. So that's what I did with the Arrowheads music. Made sure that every stage track had more than one vibe to it, where I'm using the same elements. It's not different music. It's just a different arrangement, different patterns, different feel. Sometimes, you know, the one vibe is more energetic than the other one. The other one's more calmed down, so that you can feel like you have a chance to sort of get energized and take a breath, and get energized and take a breath. This ended up working quite well. Toward the end of production though, I bought some new monitors, these fantastic Dynaudio LYD7s. That's when I realized that everything was not sounding as good as I had hoped. So I had to revisit all the music in terms of mixes, but it was okay because I wanted to revisit some of the production of the tracks as well. Some of the tracks have been sitting as they were for months because I was working on this game for about a year with Oddbird, and I was getting other ideas as time was rolling. I was like, oh, you know, I wanted to add this to the music, or there's so much more that I could do with it. So as I was revisiting to improve the mixes, I also revisited the production, just, you know, beautified it a bit more, made it a bit more full and rich. Through that, I just couldn't help but adding a third section to one of them, and noticed how much exponentially less redundant that felt to have a third vibe. So of course I was just like, oh great, now I have to do that for all of them. Which was cool. It made the music so much more colorful. It added a lot more variety to it. And again, the redundancy was significantly less there. A lot less likely that the player will notice it, with the distraction of playing and the whole experience and laughing and, you know, with their friends about who got who with an arrow or whatever. You're a lot less likely to notice. Another way that we wanted to make the music dynamic was to add layers to each track so that we can introduce different parts of the music at different stages of progression in the gameplay. Each track has a low, a medium, and a high intensity, where you start off your horde or your, you know, first to 10 matches with the basics of the music, and then after a certain period we have it set so that the music adds on the additional layer. It fades in so that you don't notice it as much. You don't notice it on a technical level, you more so notice it on an emotional level. Because as the more layers get added on, the intensity tends to build up a bit. Sometimes the percussion doesn't come until the second or third layer. Percussion can add a lot of energy. So as you're progressing further in the game, you're getting that natural anxiety of, you know, I'm getting close, I'm getting close. The music is going to be doing the same thing. It's going to be complementing that feeling by giving you more energy and giving you more to be excited about. And it also, again, helps it to feel fresh. It helps to delay that sense of redundancy. Each stage, because it was so different, was connected, but they were entirely their own thing. Bear House is a good example. Bear House stage is very specific, and I wanted the music to really almost sound like it's a snapshot of the stage. So there's an element that I have in the music where it's a very low rumbly synth, and I have that just going boom, 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 which kind of mimics for me the sound of what bare footsteps might sound like through a synth. And the stage itself has a boulder that periodically comes and falls down and then tumbles through the level. I use a giant timpani once in a while to sort of symbolize that cartoonish sound when something really big crashes into the ground. When you think bears, you also tend to think bees and honey. And so I created this other synth sound that sort of sounds like bees. And I use that as an instrument in the music as well. So combine that with, you know, the usual type of stuff that I put in there, you know, pizzicato and viola and some stringed instruments and, you know, just some fitting percussion. I ended up getting this music track that really, really fits. It feels like Bear House, kind of like, you know, the old cartoons when there was no vocals, you just had the music actually describing what was happening. Every time you had a character take, you know, those very stealth-like footsteps, you heard the piano go do 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 do, and you know, when they fell, it was a big. That was such a clever way of letting the music describe to you what's happening. I took from that and tried to make this music for the Bear House and for all the stages the bear house specifically to make it sound like a bear is doing its steps, and there's a big boulder that crashes in the music as well, and that there are bees almost singing in this music. So yeah, bear house is definitely one of my favorites. Birds of a feather. So this was so much fun. During one of my meetings with Oddbird, somehow it made it into the conversation. Somebody mentioned something about an Arrowhead's, rap song or whatever. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, okay, made a mental note. And I thought I should totally try to make sure that that actually happens. I just didn't tell them. Months and months later, when we were talking more so about the actual soundtrack, I said, yeah, there's going to be some exclusives on there. There's going to be a song, and it's going to be an Arrowhead style hip hop song. Of course, they were really excited because it was pretty much their idea. I was really pumped about it. But yeah, they were excited until I later said, I want you guys to perform on it. They probably weren't used to performing on hip hop songs, maybe, I don't know. They were really good sports about it. I told them, I'll write your parts, I'll show you, coach you guys on, how to do it. It'll just be fun. They all came over once I had the song sort of already made with my parts in it as well, and I just let them hear it. I'm like, so this is what Arrowhead sounds like as a hip hop song.
Just move your little hide, groove to the vibe, and now the battle cry squawk to your bump and grind. It's like Robin Hood meets Angry Birds, archery that's wonderfully absurd.
They thought it was great, and I was really happy about that. We got their parts in, and tons of laughs happened. So many, in fact, that I just had to add some of them at the end of the track, so you could hear that on the soundtrack. Some of the just laughs and bloopers, there was a lot of them. It was just so much fun. It was so much fun to not just, make a hip hop song or whatever, which obviously I enjoy doing, but what I love is putting a real song on a game, or in a game. That to me is just one of the most amazing things for a player to experience. And maybe that's because there are so few games throughout the entire history of gaming that have had full out vocalized performed songs on them, because the technology wouldn't allow it at the beginning, and you just maybe the industry just got used to doing music that way, and maybe it just fit better that way because more often than not you have to have instrumentals anyway, because it would just be too distracting to have the lyrics there. But every now and then there's a game that does that, and when that happens, I love it. Child of Light is one of my favorite games, and the song at the end is such a beautiful song. And I thought, this is a way that you take a game whose world you stepped into and have that game step into your world, into our reality. And that's what I wanted to do with Arrowheads. You step into this world with Arrowheads. Everything is about getting the player into this world, the music, the art, everything. This song is a way for gamers to experience Arrowheads in real life by hearing real people put their voices to the theme and the style of Arrowheads. So the song has elements from the game in it. We use the exact same sound effects. Some of the sound effects that we use in the game, use it in the song. Use some of the sound bites of the announcer, Seb. Got the whole team on there doing their chant, doing their thing, doing their little rap, and it just turned out so well, I think.
So how did this form? And how did it grow? And how did we win? Level up to yo?
Well, I thought I'd go and ask what day, and they uttered,
We slaved till it played like chocolate and peanut butter.
It was just so much fun. I love that song. I listened to it. I just couldn't stop listening to it, especially before I was able to show them, because I was so excited to show them. So I hope it's a great surprise for players when they find it in the game. It shouldn't be difficult to find, but it is in the game. And the soundtrack has a version that includes the bloopers, a little bit of laughter and whatnot at the end, which again just helps to humanize the whole thing. Yeah, that was Birds of a Feather. So working with Oddbird was fun, courteous, and non-stop learning. Everything was new and different, and we all had to just, especially them because they've been working on it for so long, but even when I jumped in, I didn't really know how I was going to do anything. I had a good idea because I have experience making music for games and making music in general, but every game is different. And, you know, I'm not just taking stuff that I've done before. I have to figure out how to make music for this game. I have to figure that out every time. It's exciting and rewarding to kind of, in the same way that you would learn about a person and be rewarded by that, and you end up having this relationship with them. That's very much what game development is like, is that you end up learning what this game is and what it's trying to be, and you develop this relationship with it, and you eventually understand it really well. So once again, I'm PJ, and this is how I compose the music for Arrowheads. Arrowheads, the game and the soundtrack are available now, so just get your copy and enjoy it. Thanks for listening. By the way, while I was filming this, I completely forgot that my french fries were in the oven, so now they're all burnt. Yeah. I mean, it's okay. There were skin on fries too.